When my husband kissed me goodbye that morning, I didn't know it would be the last time I'd look at him the same. "Just a week," he said, stuffing sunscreen into his travel bag, smiling like a teenager about to relive spring break. "You'll be fine without me." I forced a smile, even managed a soft laugh. "Of course. Go. Relax." He touched my chin gently. "Don't miss me too much." "I won't," I lied. Daniel was off to Florida for a solo holiday, something he called a mental detox. Honestly, he needed it. His tech company had just survived a brutal quarter, and between all the meetings, deadlines, and phone calls, he was barely sleeping. I understood. At least, that's what I told myself. But the truth? I was jealous. Of the quiet he was about to enjoy. Of the sunsets he'd watch alone. Of the part of him that no longer needed me like he once did. I watched him pull out of the driveway, his taillights disappearing down the street like the final scene of a movie. Then I turned back toward the house, our house, and sighed into the silence. And that's where it started. The first 2 days were uneventful. I spent my time cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, scrolling endlessly through social media, binge-watching reality shows I didn't even like. I cooked dinner for one, drank wine for two, and stared too long at the empty seat across the table. Loneliness is a strange thing. It doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in slow, quiet, patient. On the third day, I was in the kitchen reheating some leftover lasagna when the doorbell rang. It was Eric, Daniel's oldest friend. I hadn't seen him in months. He stood at the door, tall as ever, sun-kissed skin, black shirt clinging to his chest in all the right places. His smile was crooked, boyish, too familiar for comfort. "Hey, Jenna! Didn't think you'd be alone," he said casually, stepping inside before I could even finish greeting him. "Daniel's out of town," I replied, trying not to sound too eager or too suspicious. "He's in Florida. Week-long trip." Eric whistled. "Must be nice." Man always knew how to treat himself. He walked into the living room like it was his own place, just like he used to back in the early days, when he and Daniel would watch sports on weekends and drink until 3 a.m. I stood awkwardly by the kitchen, unsure why my heart was racing. It wasn't just the surprise of seeing him. It was something else. He looked around, took a deep breath, then grinned. "Smells like lasagna. You hungry?" He chuckled. "You always knew how to read my mind." I ended up heating a second plate. We sat at the table, chatting, sipping red wine, the kind Daniel never liked. I hadn't laughed that much in months. Eric made me feel noticed, present, like I wasn't just a fixture in someone else's house. At one point, he looked across the table and said, "You know, I always wondered how Daniel got so lucky with you." I smiled politely. "Well, maybe I got lucky too." "Maybe," he said, his eyes holding mine for a moment too long. Later that night, he stayed longer than he should have. We sat in the den, legs barely touching, and the silence between us was different. He reached for my wine glass, his fingers brushing mine. I didn't pull away. I didn't move at all. "You ever think about something different?" he asked. "What do you mean?" He leaned in slightly. "I don't know. Life not going the way you thought it would. Feelings showing up in places they shouldn't." The way he said it, so careful, so deliberate, made my stomach twist. "I'm married, Eric." "I know," he whispered. "Doesn't change how I feel." For a second, the room felt too quiet. My heart pounded, so hard I thought he could hear it. Then, without permission, his hand slid to my thigh. And I didn't stop him. It was just a kiss. At first. Soft. Lingering. Forbidden. But even the softest sins leave bruises. I pulled away, breathless, my mind spinning. "You need to go," I said, half hoping he wouldn't. He nodded, lips parted, his eyes saying what his mouth didn't. That night I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, playing the kiss over and over again in my mind. My guilt sat beside me like a phantom in the dark. But the truth? I didn't regret it. Not yet. If you've ever been caught between desire and duty, between right and wrong, like this story and subscribe for more intense, real-life tales that don't hold back. Because sometimes, the things we hide are the ones that tell the most powerful stories. The next morning, I told myself it meant nothing. That it was just a moment, a slip. But deep down, I knew something had started. And it wouldn't end with a kiss. Not in this house. Not with the door still unlocked. They say if you feed a flame once, it remembers the taste. That kiss with Eric, it should have ended there. But some fires, once lit, have no interest in dying quietly. The morning after our little encounter, I spent hours trying to shake the heat of his lips from mine. I busied myself with laundry, folding Daniel's clothes like they still mattered, wiping down countertops that didn't need wiping. I kept expecting guilt to punch me in the chest. But instead, all I felt was anticipation. I checked my phone more than I should have. Nothing from Eric. No text. No call. The silence felt heavier than his hand had been on my thigh. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself it was for the best. But I couldn't stop remembering the look in his eyes when he left. Around 3 p.m., I stepped into the shower, hoping the water would drown out everything swirling inside me. That was when I heard the text notification. I dried my hands fast and grabbed my phone. Eric, can't stop thinking about last night. Can I see you again? Just for coffee. Nothing more. Nothing more. I laughed. Bitterly. Like he wasn't already burned into my skin. We met the next day. This time at a small cafe just outside town, far enough from our neighborhood to feel safe. Eric wore a gray Henley shirt that clung to him in the worst and best ways. When I walked in, his eyes lit up like I was the secret he'd been dying to keep. "Didn't think you'd show," he said, standing to pull out my chair. I sat, keeping my hands folded in my lap, pretending I had some self-control left. "Neither did I," I replied. He looked at me for a moment, then leaned forward. "Jenna," I meant what I said. "I've thought about you for years, even when you were dating Daniel. Hell, especially then." I swallowed hard. "Eric, he's your best friend." "I know," he said, almost too casually, "but that doesn't change the way I feel." And I hated that part of me agreed. That part of me wanted someone to look at me like I was more than just a wife, more than just Daniel's shadow. We talked for over an hour. About everything. About nothing. His hand brushed mine again, and again I didn't move. I kept telling myself I was just enjoying the attention. Just a coffee. Just a moment. But I knew where it was headed. That night, he came over. I didn't plan it. At least, that's what I told myself. It was raining. The thunder rolled in just after 9 p.m., and I was curled up on the couch when he texted again. "Eric, storm's bad. You okay?" "Me, I'm fine. Just home." "Eric, want company?" I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, heart thumping so loud I barely heard the doorbell ring. He was already at the door. Wet, breathless, and dangerous. I should have shut the door. Instead, I stepped aside. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. Right there, in the living room, on the couch where Daniel and I used to watch movies, we crossed a line we couldn't come back from. His mouth was desperate. My skin responded like it had waited years to be touched by him. There was no guilt, no second-guessing. Just heat, movement, madness. And when it was over, I lay there beside him, still breathless, still trembling, my robe tangled around my waist. Eric traced a finger down my collarbone. "You don't regret it, do you?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and whispered, "Not yet." For the next 3 days, we lived in our secret. Eric would come over after dark, after I was sure no neighbors were watching. We kept the lights low, the curtains drawn, the excuses ready. He touched me in ways Daniel never did anymore. He made me laugh again. He made me feel. And I kept telling myself it was temporary. But temporary sins can still leave permanent scars. On the 5th day, I was in the kitchen reheating some of the pasta Eric liked. He was due to stop by after 7. I wore a silk slip under my robe, something I hadn't worn in years. The house was too quiet, too ready. That was when the phone rang. It was Daniel. "Hey," I said, steadying my voice. "Flight's been delayed," he said. "Might be back earlier than planned. Probably late tonight or early tomorrow." I froze. "Tonight?" "Yeah. Around midnight, maybe. Just wanted to surprise you." I forced a smile he couldn't see. "You always do." After we hung up, I felt my heart race like I'd been caught even though I hadn't. "Not yet." I texted Eric. "Me. Change of plans. He might be coming home tonight." "Eric, no problem." One last time. I'll come early. Just an hour. I need to see you. And I agreed. Of course I did. Because when you're already halfway over the cliff, what's one more step? He arrived just after 6:30. We didn't even eat. The tension was already boiling when I opened the door. His hands were on me before it shut. We stumbled into the kitchen, his lips on my neck, mine whispering his name, and everything around us faded into background noise. That was when we heard the door. The front door. Keys jangling. A suitcase rolling over tile. Eric froze. I blinked. My robe half open. His shirt on the floor. Daniel's voice echoed through the foyer. Jenna! I shoved Eric toward the hallway, panic surging through me. Go. Hide. Now. But it was too late. Daniel stood at the archway into the kitchen. His eyes met mine first. Then they dropped to the floor, Eric's shirt. Then back to Eric, half naked and frozen behind me. The look on his face. Not rage. Not confusion. Just devastation. Like someone had ripped the air out of his lungs and replaced it with glass. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just turned and walked out the door. If you're still reading this and wondering how it all spiraled so fast, like and subscribe for more stories that dig into the raw, messy sides of love, betrayal, and what happens when desire wins. Because sometimes the truth is more dramatic than fiction, and no one ever sees the ending coming. If betrayal had a sound, it would be the quiet slam of the front door and the haunting echo it left in its wake. That's all I remember. Not Eric standing in the kitchen shirtless, not the dinner half-cooked on the stove, not even the robe slipping down my shoulders in shame. All I could hear was that door closing and everything I had built with Daniel collapsing behind it. I didn't chase after him. Not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't move. My legs were jelly, and my throat felt like it had swallowed sand. Eric, still frozen behind me, finally whispered, Jenna, what do we do now? I turned to him slowly. His face was pale. That cocky grin he usually wore was long gone. And in its place, a fear I couldn't share, because I was already drowning in my own. You need to leave, I said, my voice hoarse. But, leave. Now. He grabbed his shirt off the floor and didn't say another word. He slipped out the back like a criminal and disappeared into the night. And I was alone. Again. Alone with the ruin I had created. That night was the longest of my life. I sat at the edge of the bed in the dark, my robe still loose around me. The pasta on the stove burned. Smoke filled the kitchen. The fire alarm blared, but I didn't move. Let it burn. Maybe it all should have. The next morning, Daniel still hadn't returned. His car wasn't in the driveway. His phone went straight to voicemail. I texted him once, then again. Me. Daniel, please come home. We need to talk. Me, I'm so sorry. Please. Me. I made a terrible mistake. I know. But we need to talk. There was no reply, and each hour that passed felt like a punishment I deserved. 3 days went by. 3 silent days. Until finally, I heard the garage open. I raced to the window and saw him, Daniel, pulling into the driveway in the same car he left in. But everything about him looked older. Stiffer. Like the weight of what he saw had aged him overnight. I met him at the door, heart pounding. Daniel. He held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. The distance in his eyes cut deeper than any word could. I just want to explain. I tried again. He walked past me, heading toward the kitchen. I followed. I know you don't want to hear it. But please, I have to say something. You don't get to say anything, he snapped, turning on me. You don't get to cheat on me in my house and then beg for understanding. You don't get to turn this into a sob story about how you feel. I flinched. He was right. There was nothing I could say that would erase what he walked in on. Still, I tried. It wasn't planned, Daniel. I never meant for it to go that far. I was lonely. I was lonely, he barked. I trusted you. You were supposed to be my partner, my wife. And you threw it all away for what? A cheap thrill with my friend. Hearing it out loud made it even worse. I covered my face with my hands. I don't know what I was thinking. That's the problem, Jenna. You weren't thinking. We stood there in silence for a long time, the distance between us feeling like a canyon. Then he said something that shattered what little hope I had left. I'm moving out. No, I gasped. Please. We can go to therapy. We can talk. I'll do anything, Daniel. Anything. I don't want to fix it, he said, voice flat. I don't even know who you are anymore. That cut deep, because neither did I. The next few days blurred together. Daniel packed his things slowly, box by box, room by room. He didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He didn't even argue. And somehow that was worse, because I would have preferred anger. At least that would have meant he still felt something for me. But this version of him, cold, detached, distant, that was a man who had already let go. I watched him carry out the last of his bags one evening, and the house felt emptier than it ever had. I walked into our bedroom, my bedroom now, and curled up in the sheets we once shared. They smelled like loss. That night, I got a message from Eric. Eric, is he gone? Me, yes. Eric, do you want me to come over? I stared at the message for a long time. And then I typed back. Me, no. Please don't contact me again. Because as much as I wanted to escape the pain, I knew I couldn't do it with the man who caused it. I won't lie to you. I didn't become a saint after that. I cried every night. I screamed into pillows. I punched the steering wheel during red lights. I stared at the bathroom mirror for hours, wondering how I had become the woman who destroyed her own marriage. And to make things worse, word got out. One of our neighbors, nosy as ever, had seen Eric leaving that night. And of course, gossip travels faster than truth. People at the grocery store stopped smiling. Parents at the school drop-off line whispered behindhands. Even my own sister looked at me differently. I had become that woman, the one people judged but secretly pitied. If you're still with me, take a second to like and subscribe for more raw and honest stories like this one. Sometimes we don't need fairy tales. Sometimes we need the truth, even when it's ugly. Because no one tells you how quickly your whole life can change from one mistake. And no one prepares you for how long it takes to rebuild what you shattered. They say guilt has a smell, something sour, heavy and cold. That morning, I woke up with it wrapped around my body like a second skin. The sun was bright, but I felt darker than I ever had. Eric was still in my bed. His arm was draped across my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder, and his presence, so familiar now, filled the room like smoke. I didn't want to move, not because I wanted him to stay, but because moving meant facing what we'd done. Again, for the third time that week, I had slept with my husband's best friend. And for the first time, I didn't feel the thrill of secrecy anymore. I felt sick. By noon, Eric had left. No grand goodbye. No promises. Just a lazy kiss at the doorway and a text me later. As if what we were doing was just another afternoon errand. I cleaned the sheets obsessively. I scrubbed the floor. I opened every window. I even took a shower that lasted almost an hour, hoping the water could wash off the shame. But it stayed. It always stayed. I tried to distract myself by baking, something I hadn't done in months. Banana bread, cinnamon rolls, anything that filled the house with warmth that I didn't feel inside. My apron was covered in flour, my hands trembling as I stirred the batter. I told myself I'd end it, that this time was the last. And then the phone rang. Hey, baby. It was Daniel. I swallowed hard. Hi. You sound weird. Everything okay? Yeah, just tired. Been cleaning all day. He chuckled. You and your cleaning marathons. I forced a laugh. How's Florida? There was a pause. About that. I'm actually heading back tonight. I stopped stirring. Tonight? Yeah, flights got moved up. I'll be home in about 4 hours. Wanted to surprise you, but I figured I should let you know. Panic bloomed in my chest like wildfire. Yeah, great. I'll see you soon. The moment I hung up, I went into overdrive. I checked every inch of the house, every sign of Eric. I washed the wine glasses, scrubbed the couch cushions, sprayed the guest bathroom with enough air freshener to choke someone. I changed the bedsheets again. I even checked the backyard, just in case. Everything looked untouched. Perfect. By the time Daniel walked through the front door, I was standing in the kitchen, wearing the smile I'd practiced in the mirror. He looked tired, but happy to be home. I kissed him, lightly, like a stranger who still remembered how to pretend. I missed you, he said. I missed you too, I replied, tasting the lie as it left my lips. He dropped his bag by the stairs, looked around, then raised a brow. Smells amazing in here. Banana bread, I said. It's in the oven. Damn. I leave you for a few days and come back to a whole new wife. I laughed, but it cracked at the edges. We spent the evening watching a movie, cuddled on the couch. He was more affectionate than usual. Maybe the break had done something for him. He kept looking at me, touching my thigh, kissing my cheek. I felt like a criminal lying next to her victim. And then he said something that made my blood turn cold. I ran into Eric at the airport. My heart stopped. What? Yeah. Saw him in the terminal. He said he came back from a quick business trip. Asked if I was back home yet. Said he might drop by next week. I forced my face into something neutral. Oh. Okay. He looked good. Leaner. Happier. I said nothing. Daniel turned back to the TV, but I couldn't focus. My mind was spinning. Had Eric planned to bump into him? Was it coincidence? Did he say anything? Did he lie as smoothly as I had? That night, Daniel kissed me harder. Slower. With a hunger I hadn't seen in a while. I let him take me, let him believe everything was okay. Let him fall asleep with his arms wrapped around me like nothing had changed. But everything had. Everything. The next morning, it happened. I was in the kitchen, mixing pancake batter. Daniel was in the shower. The doorbell rang. And before I could even dry my hands, it rang again. I wiped them on a towel and opened the door. It was Eric. I nearly slammed it shut. What the hell are you doing here? I hissed. I needed to see you. I stepped outside quickly and shut the door behind me. Are you insane? He's home. I know. That's why I came early. We need to talk. There's nothing left to say. He grabbed my hand. Jenna, don't do this. Eric! And that's when the door opened behind me. The kitchen door. I turned, and there was Daniel, standing barefoot, holding a towel, with water still dripping from his hair. His face was blank. His eyes weren't. They were glass. Ice. Stone. He looked at me, then at Eric, then back at me, and said nothing. The silence was worse than screaming. I stepped forward, panic rising in my throat. Daniel, Don't, he said. Just that. One word. He turned, walked back inside, and let the door close behind him. The rest was a blur. Eric left without another word. I stood outside for minutes that felt like hours, too afraid to face what waited inside. But eventually, I went back in. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, fully dressed now. Hands folded. Eyes red. I didn't speak. He did. How long? I sat down slowly. A few days. While you were gone. He nodded. Swallowed. Why? I don't know. I felt alone. Invisible. He blinked. So you slept with my best friend? Tears streamed down my cheeks. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. He looked away. You could have just told me. Yelled. Fought. Anything. But this. I didn't plan it. That makes it worse. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. And then he stood up. I'm going to stay at a hotel. I'll be back tomorrow for my things. Daniel, please, can we talk about this? But he was already walking out, bag in hand, keys in his pocket. I stood in the doorway, watching him pull away, just like that first morning. But this time, he wasn't coming back with sunscreen and smiles. This time, he was leaving with everything I destroyed. If you've ever made a mistake that cost you the one person who truly loved you, like this story and subscribe for more raw and emotional tales that dig deep into love, betrayal, and the truths we try to hide. Because sometimes, the stories we're too ashamed to tell are the ones we need to hear the most.